Today, I'll tell you the turbulent story of Sarah Hurst, a beautiful, proud young woman alienated by her own family. On her father's birthday, an occasion she should have been joyfully celebrating, Sarah Hurst could only offer wishes over the phone, long since disregarded by her family. But unexpectedly, her father abruptly called and demanded her presence at the party, leaving Sarah bewildered and anxious. She had to go, in the elegant evening gown the housekeeper had prepared, but it was excessively revealing, leaving her feeling embarrassed and uncomfortable. Upon arrival, she was immediately mocked by her half-sister, Diana Hurst. Diana called her a spinster, cruelly taunting Sarah for being unmarried. What seemed like mere sarcasm was, in fact, just the beginning of the drama Diana and her father had orchestrated. Throughout the party, her father, Kenneth Hurst, incessantly introduced Sarah to guests, mostly middle-aged men, including Director Thomas, a vulgar and lecherous man. He shamelessly seized the opportunity to approach Sarah, forcing her to drink one glass after another. Intoxicated, she endured Thomas's hand constantly on her shoulder. She wanted to escape, but her father simply smiled, pleased as if enjoying a lucrative business deal. Sarah gradually realized this party was merely a means for him to secure a contract, even willing to sacrifice her. While enduring Director Thomas's lewd gaze, she saw Diana Hurst standing in the distance, a smug look on her face. Overwhelmed by feelings of resentment and betrayal, Sarah decided to fight back. In an instant, she shoved Thomas hard, disregarding all etiquette, then walked over and slapped Diana hard across the face. The unexpected slap enraged Diana, who grabbed Sarah's hair, creating a chaotic scene between the two sisters, shocking all the guests. Kenneth Hurst quickly intervened, scolding Sarah for disgracing the family. Instead of fear, Sarah laughed coldly, decisively pulling down the straps of her dress, exposing the shapewear underneath. "Is it me who disgraces you, or are you disgracing yourself? Am I your daughter, or just someone you brought here to pour drinks for others?" Sarah Hurst's icy words echoed like thunder through the party, drawing everyone's attention. Before them stood the eldest daughter of the Hurst family, directly confronting her father, Kenneth Hurst, chairman of the board, who had just faced a public humiliation he hadn't foreseen. His face red with rage, he slapped her hard, sending her tumbling to the floor. Under the mocking gazes of those around her, Sarah proudly stood up, declaring she had never considered this place her home. Just when things seemed at their worst, a mysterious figure appeared. It was Luke Cole, the young CEO of ClearPath Corporation, a man with deep, authoritative eyes and an air of mystery. Luke Cole, who hadn't intended to interfere, unexpectedly stepped forward, shielding Sarah from Director Thomas's lascivious gaze with his jacket. He coldly pushed Thomas's hand away and declared powerfully, "Her father asked her to leave, but he didn't say you could take her." Before Luke Cole's arrival, the guests fell silent, and Kenneth Hurst's prior arrogance shifted to obsequious deference. Sarah, always proud and self-respecting, found herself swept into the arms of this aloof man as he unexpectedly lifted her. Flustered, she clung to his shoulders for balance. Luke Cole's warm whisper in her ear made her blush, "If you don't want to fall, put your arms around my neck." At that moment, Kenneth Hurst's smug expression vanished, replaced by suspicion. Luke Cole, the powerful and arrogant CEO, was helping his daughter. Could it be, this man had taken an interest in her? As Kenneth Hurst began to see a lucrative business opportunity with Luke Cole, the man who had just carried his daughter out of the party in a scene straight out of a drama, he considered partnering with this powerful CEO. The benefits would far outweigh the shady deal with Director Thomas. But Luke Cole paid no attention to anyone else's calculations. With a cold, commanding air, he carried Sarah from the hall, stunning everyone present, and silencing the curious phones like he was dispersing paparazzi. In the car, Luke Cole instructed the driver to raise the partition, creating a private space between him and Sarah Hurst. This quiet intimacy left Sarah with nowhere to hide, facing the enigmatic, aloof CEO who had just rescued her from Director Thomas's leering gaze. However, instead of remaining silent like in a romantic movie scene, Sarah broke the tension with a suspicious question, "Why did you help me?" Luke Cole didn't answer immediately but gently took hold of her swollen ankle, making Sarah flinch and recoil. Pain shot through her, but she managed to gasp, "What are you doing? That hurts." Unfazed, with the casual air of someone accustomed to handling important matters, Luke Cole continued to examine her injury, gently chiding, "You're quite stubborn." Just as the atmosphere began to thaw, Sarah, ever confident in her independence, quickly opened the car door, offering a grateful smile. "Thank you for your help. I'm a surgeon, I can take care of this small injury myself." And to Luke Cole's surprise, she hopped out of the car, completely ignoring the charged atmosphere and the powerful man who had just assisted her. Back in the car, CEO Luke Cole, the man no one dared refuse, smirked slightly, "An interesting woman." This scene made his assistant, Mark Lane, chuckle, thinking, "Is there actually someone who dares to ignore our CEO?" Leaving the luxurious car, Sarah arrived at the hospital looking disheveled, hoping to slip into Dr. Nathan Tate's office and quietly treat her injury. But life wasn't a dream. As she discreetly applied ointment, the door burst open, and Nathan Tate, the sharp surgical resident, appeared as if catching her red-handed in a midnight study session. His keen eyes fell on her swollen ankle, and he scoffed, "I never thought you were so dedicated to your studies that you'd return to the hospital at night." Sarah, mortified, could only lower her head. But Nathan Tate didn't stop there. He took the antiseptic tray and began applying ointment to her swollen ankle himself, scolding her gently, "Sacrificing your own foot just for practice." Sarah sat there, a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude, feebly protesting, "Doctor, there's no need, I can do it myself." Sarah Hurst recoiled from Nathan Tate's disinfectant tray, earning a sarcastic jab, "Giving up already? Slacking off? Hospital work doesn't offer sick days." Stung, Sarah endured his rough handling, fighting back tears. He then tossed her scrubs, curtly stating, "Maintain a trainee's image." Resentfully, Sarah went to change. Later, visiting her grandfather in the hospital, Sarah vowed to cover his expenses, regardless of the cost. However, despite her confident declaration to Nathan Tate, she worried about securing the funds. Luke Cole, yesterday's benefactor, came to mind. Holding his card, Sarah debated asking for help, hesitant to impose on a near stranger. So, she readily accepted his assistant's meeting invitation. Arriving at the upscale restaurant, Sarah winced at the prices but waited patiently. Outside, Luke Cole watched her comical reaction to the menu before entering. After pleasant tries, Sarah bluntly inquired, "Director Cole, you're single, right? Considered marriage?" His gaze flickered before he calmly replied he was still searching. Composed, Sarah sipped her water, then boldly asked, "What about me?" Luke Cole chuckled, "Repaying me with yourself?" Unflinching, Sarah retorted, "Otherwise, I wouldn't be here," and proposed, "I'll be direct. Interested in a contract marriage?" Luke Cole's eyebrows shot up at Sarah Hurst's contract marriage proposal, as if thinking, "What makes you think I'd choose you? Do you know how many women are vying to be my wife?" Unfazed, Sarah bargained, "Help me reclaim the Hurst family, I'll boost your career. Mutual benefit. A promising negotiation." Yet, Luke Cole deflated her, "The Hurst family is near bankruptcy. What's the point?" Sarah had never felt so utterly defeated. Her trump card held no weight. Luke Cole, amused, observed her shifting expressions like a captivating film. As Sarah prepared to flee, he called her back, casually stating, "I haven't refused." With an enigmatic smile, Luke Cole dropped a bombshell, "I want half of the Hearst Corporation." Sarah froze. Half. Granting Luke Cole control. Conflict warred within her, despite her father's flaws, the corporation was his life's work. Luke Cole, with feigned kindness, gave her 3 days to decide, leaving Sarah reeling in the restaurant. Back at the hospital, hoping for some peace, Sarah was met by Nathan Tate, seeing her in the evening gown, coldly criticized, "Are you here to work or stroll around? Change into your scrubs immediately." Unable to explain, Sarah lowered her head and accepted the reprimand. Finally, she visited her grandfather, holding his hand, her heart aching. She remembered happy childhood days with her father, a once warm and loving man. These memories strengthened her resolve. Standing in the hospital garden, she decided to call her father, the man who had made her life a living hell the night before. The moment the call connected, Kenneth Hurst's first words were a crushing blow. "You have the nerve to call? Director Thomas isn't furious yet, get back here now." Sarah realized that to her father, she was nothing more than a pawn. As soon as Kenneth Hurst started ordering her around, Sarah hung up. Exhausted by his coldness, she recognized the call as nothing but self-inflicted pain. Muttering that he had severed the last thread between them, she immediately called Luke Cole. Upon hearing her agreement to his terms, he replied with a curt but satisfied, "Deal." Meanwhile, Kenneth Hurst fumed at Sarah for daring to hang up on him, cursing her disobedience. Nancy West, his wife, and Diana Hurst, Sarah's half-sister, quickly fanned the flames of his anger. But remembering Luke Cole's previous interest in Sarah, a flicker of excitement ignited within him. If the CEO was truly interested, his daughter could secure him a deal even bigger than the one with Director Thomas. Diana, overhearing this, expressed her displeasure, reminding her father that Luke Cole wouldn't be interested in her bookworm sister. She subtly implied her own greater suitability, further bolstering his belief in his younger daughter's shrewdness. He resolved to bring Sarah back, to give her a chance with Director Thomas. Diana sweetly saw her father to the door, while Nancy West, watching from the staircase, beamed with pride, encouraging her daughter to aim for even more powerful families. Meanwhile, Sarah, having just ended her call with Luke Cole, bumped into Dr. Nathan Tate. Assuming she was being reprimanded for shirking her duties, she immediately apologized. Nathan Tate coldly inquired about her grandfather's hospital bills. Hearing her vague reply about figuring something out, he suspected she was planning something reckless, cautioning her against overworking herself outside of her regular hours. Sarah quickly excused herself and left, leaving Nathan Tate looking worried. Sarah rushed into the changing room, closed the door, and sighed wearily, wondering if her decision was the right one. Sarah thought how wonderful it would be to find a side job for extra income. But looking at her current internship, exhausting, low-paying, she realized that Luke Cole's offer was the only shortcut. Telling herself she'd focus on stabilizing her situation before leaving as soon as possible, Sarah threw herself into her work with renewed vigor, so much so that even Dr. Nathan Tate, the hospital's strictest doctor, couldn't find fault. Just as she was about to call a friend for a place to crash, a colleague informed her that her father, Kenneth Hurst, was waiting in the hallway. Kenneth Hurst? The man who considered her becoming a doctor a waste of her youth. Skeptical, she went downstairs. As expected, she found him refusing to come inside, sitting on a bench outside, his face etched with displeasure. Upon meeting her, he scolded her, demanding she change into something more presentable to meet Director Thomas. Hearing her father's taunt, "How much do you even make as a doctor?" she couldn't hold back, retorting, "You make so much, have you ever given a single penny to Grandpa?" Kenneth Hurst exploded at this, adding a patriarchal jab, "You're just like your mother, always causing trouble." Sarah, unable to contain her anger, turned to leave, but her father threatened her. If she didn't accompany him to meet Director Thomas tonight, he'd kick Grandpa out onto the streets. Cornered, she took a deep breath and tried to remain calm. That evening, as Sarah carried Nathan Tate's gifts out to the lobby, Kenneth Hurst's car pulled up. She froze, dreading the father-daughter reunion in this situation. Just then, Nathan Tate stepped in front of her, turning to Mr. Hurst and introducing himself calmly but firmly, "Hello, sir. I'm Sarah's tutor. She needs to accompany me to meet an important teacher." Kenneth Hurst's face darkened. "I don't care what kind of teacher you are," he declared, "tonight, she's mine. He moved swiftly to grab her arm, as if the appointment with Director Thomas was a matter of life and death over which only he had control. Before Sarah could react, Nathan Tate swiftly pushed her into his car, slammed the door, and tilted his chin at Kenneth Hurst with a chillingly cool, villain, stare. Mr. Hurst's face turned red with rage. "Who the hell are you to steal my daughter?" he roared. Expecting Nathan Tate to back down, he was met with a smile and a nonchalant, "Sorry, Mr. Hurst, I can't do that." The scene was tense when a sleek black Bugatti screeched to a halt, blocking Nathan Tate's car. Before anyone could understand what was happening, Luke Cole emerged with an aura of captivating charm. The climax came when he announced, "I'm here to pick up my fiancée." Not only was Kenneth Hurst's jaw on the floor, but Sarah's face turned redder than a tomato as she looked down. Nathan Tate raised an eyebrow, but no one was more shocked than Kenneth Hurst, who stood frozen as if someone had pressed pause. As if to confirm his statement, Luke Cole gallantly opened the car door for Sarah, extending his hand with a romantic, CEO novel, gesture. With no other option, she placed her hand in his. As the Bugatti drove away, Kenneth Hurst practically started celebrating right there. Back home, he was so excited he put on music and hummed, happier than if he'd won the lottery. Diana Hurst, seeing her father's joy, assumed her sister had fallen for Director Thomas. She received a shocking plot twist: Sarah's fiancé was Luke Cole. Diana froze, managing a weak smile while seething inside. Luke Cole, her longtime national crush, had been snatched by her sister. Mr. Hurst was already envisioning future grandchildren. Diana Hurst gritted her teeth, determined. She thinks she can have him that easily. Luke Cole can only be mine. In another part of the city, the Bugatti delivered Sarah to Luke Cole's luxurious villa. Stopping the car, he opened the door for her with a chivalrous gesture, a true, romantic hero that would melt any heart. The moment she stepped into the mansion, Sarah Hurst, flustered at being addressed as Madam Cole, stammered, "Please, just call me Sarah." Luke Cole, his gaze suggestive, softly countered, "Having second thoughts already?" She hastily denied it, trying to ignore his teasing eyes. Seemingly unfazed, he simply replied, "As you wish," and led her inside. The living room, elegant and refined rather than ostentatious, contrasted sharply with the Hurst family's showy style. "He's got good taste," she thought. Lost in observation, she was greeted by a middle-aged woman, Diana Lynn, the housekeeper, whom Luke Cole introduced as her guide for a tour of the house. He then excused himself, leaving Sarah with Diana Lynn. While Sarah explored the mansion, Luke Cole retreated to his study, retrieving an old photograph from a drawer. It was a high school group photo, but tucked in a corner was Sarah Hurst, the girl who had once captivated him with her natural beauty and innocent charm, sincerely rejecting every confession. Back then, they became confidants through online messages, and he gradually understood her pain, her mother's abandonment, the coldness of her father and stepmother, and an inexplicable insecurity. Determined to investigate her past, he picked up the phone and instructed his assistant to delve into the Hurst family history. Dinner was ready, but Sarah was nowhere to be seen. Diana Lynn informed him that she had gone to change, her room adjacent to his own. Luke Cole walked towards her room. Finding it tidy, with a fresh towel laid out, he settled on the sofa to wait. Moments later, the bathroom door opened, their eyes met unexpectedly, and an awkward silence descended. Finding no towel in the bathroom, Sarah emerged, unaware of his presence. Flustered, she retreated towards the bathroom, her face crimson. What are you doing here?" Holding the towel, Luke Cole stood calmly before the bathroom door, a smile playing on his lips. "I brought you a towel. Open the door, and I'll give it to you." Luke Cole chuckled softly, then closed his eyes as Sarah requested. Seizing the opportunity, she snatched the towel from his hand, blurting a flustered, "Thank you," before slamming the door shut. Before she could compose herself, his voice drifted from outside, "You're welcome." He turned to leave, but she immediately called out, "Wait." Luke Cole paused, patiently waiting for her question, "About a bathrobe?" Sarah Hurst, both curious and embarrassed, thought, it's unlikely a single man would have a woman's bathrobe readily available. But asked anyway. In response, Luke Cole's lips curved into a cryptic smile. He returned to the room, placing a large, baggy men's sleepwear set on the bed. Left with no other choice, Sarah reluctantly donned the oversized sleepwear, awkwardly rolling up the sleeves and pant legs before heading downstairs. Just then, Luke Cole emerged from the dining room, surveyed her from head to toe, and instructed Diana Lynn, "Take Madam shopping for some clothes tomorrow." It wasn't a request. Sarah, blushing, quickly interjected, "That's not necessary. I can bring clothes from home." Then mentally cursed, "Damn it, I just slipped up." Throughout dinner, both Luke Cole and Diana Lynn wore knowing smiles, as if they saw right through her, making Sarah wish she could hide her face in shame. After dinner, Luke Cole unexpectedly invited her for a walk, but she immediately declined, using the excuse of wanting to chat with Diana Lynn. He simply nodded and went out, leaving her to sit and gossip with the housekeeper. Just then, Diana Lynn brought out a plate of fresh fruit and recounted how Luke Cole diligently went to the market every morning. "He's so sweet, the older vendors always save the best fruits and vegetables for him." Sarah Hurst was surprised, nodding in thought, "I didn't expect him to be so friendly." However, in her heart, she kept reminding herself that this was just a marriage of convenience. Each person had their own reasons and benefits to gain, and she didn't dare to dream of anything beyond that. As she prepared to say goodbye to Diana Lynn and return to her room, she pensively thought, "A contract is a contract, but I didn't expect the contract husband to be so attractive." Sarah Hurst smiled in response to Diana Lynn, reassuring herself about the hardships of her internship, but it was all right, because this job was still much more comfortable than dealing with the constant family drama at the Hurst family. Then, after saying goodbye to Diana Lynn and going up to her room hoping to get some sleep, she tossed and turned. Finally, defeated by the unfamiliar bed, she irritably went downstairs earlier than planned. Diana Lynn was surprised to see her dressed in her previous clothes and neatly downstairs before it was time for her shift. Seeing Sarah Hurst's confused expression, Diana Lynn simply smiled gently and quickly prepared things to take her to the hospital, even joking, "Let you walk at night? Who would dare let our Madam Cole go alone like that?" Sitting in Diana Lynn's car, Sarah Hurst thought that this was probably the first time in her life that someone was willing to give her a ride so sincerely. The Hurst family only ever wanted her to quietly exist, but Diana Lynn, someone she had only just met, valued her so much. A warm feeling arose in her heart, making her silently thank Diana Lynn. She didn't know that upstairs, Luke Cole was standing by the window, watching every moment. It seemed her life had stealthily trapped a loyal audience. When she arrived at the hospital, she thought things would be quiet, but she immediately ran into Dr. Nathan Tate, who didn't hesitate to interrogate her about the news of her engagement to Luke Cole, as if trying to uncover every mysterious aspect of their relationship. She was flustered but still answered with a rather generic, "I like him." But what kind of like it was, only heaven knew. She quickly changed the subject, no longer wanting to prolong the awkward atmosphere. After her checkup, she received a call from her father. Hearing his voice as excited as if he was about to marry off his daughter to a billionaire, she dejectedly considered hanging up, but couldn't stand it when he kept mentioning the golden opportunity, demanding that she keep Luke Cole for the family at all costs. At this point, Sarah Hurst couldn't hold back and snapped, making him even angrier, threatening not to pay her grandfather's hospital bills if she dared to ruin things. Feeling like she had no way out, Sarah Hurst told herself that tomorrow she would pack her things and move to Luke Cole's house. After all, this engagement contract was a temporary solution for her to escape that domineering family. However, all thoughts abruptly stopped when she opened the door to the hospital room. At the end of the room, her grandfather's bed, now empty, with no one in sight. Sarah Hurst, panicked, ran off so frantically that no one needed to ask to know how freaked out she was. Reaching the nurse's station, she learned the surprising news: her grandfather had been moved to a private VIP room, all arranged by Luke Cole. He'd not only covered all the hospital bills but also scheduled next week's surgery with a top surgeon. She stood there, half-touched, half-stunned by Director Cole's lightning-fast actions. Nothing was more terrifying than the attentiveness of a wealthy, powerful man. Arriving at the VIP room, Sarah Hurst was overwhelmed by the clean, comfortable space. She gently held her grandfather's hand, softly telling him about her upcoming marriage and hoping he'd recover quickly to attend the big day. Outside, Nathan Tate happened to witness this touching moment, his heart filled with indescribable emotions. Having worked the night shift, Diana Lynn drove to pick Sarah Hurst up the next morning to take her to Cole's house. Upon arrival, Sarah suddenly remembered her belongings were still at the Hurst family estate, but she was hesitant to go back and retrieve them, knowing she'd have to endure her stepmother's unpleasantness. Fortunately, Diana Lynn was ready to help, mentioning that Luke Cole had already anticipated this. Sarah made a list, surprised and pleased when Diana Lynn complimented her handwriting, feeling a sense of peace in everyone's thoughtfulness. Everything was quickly arranged, and Mark Lane, Luke Cole's assistant, was tasked with retrieving the items from the Hurst family estate. At the same time, at the Hurst family, Diana Hurst and her mother were discussing Sarah Hurst's romantic triumph with envious disdain. They couldn't understand how a bookish girl like Sarah had caught Director Cole's eye, and Diana was particularly annoyed, believing herself to be more beautiful and yet unable to capture his affections. As they sat there stewing in resentment and jealousy, the maid entered, announcing the arrival of Director Cole's assistant, Mark Lane. Hearing the unfamiliar name, Diana Hurst frowned. Doubly disgruntled, a mixture of surprise and envy, she couldn't help but wonder if she could seize this opportunity to somehow turn the tables and win Director Cole's attention. At the Hurst family estate, Nancy West heard that Mark Lane, Luke Cole's assistant, had arrived to collect belongings for Madame Cole. The mere title irritated her immensely, and without hesitation, she flew into a rage and ordered him to be sent away. But Diana Hurst calmly intervened, advising her mother to let him in. Nancy West looked at her daughter, slightly surprised, but eventually shrugged and sighed, uttering a hopeful, "I'm waiting for good news from you," before cheerfully heading off to her card game. So, Diana Hurst invited Mark Lane in. The young man, appearing shy and hesitant, introduced himself and asked for directions to Sarah Hurst's room. Diana Hurst quickly recognized him as a rookie, easily manipulated. She looked him up and down, carefully assessing him before flashing a charming, sweet smile. She inquired about the Madame Cole he'd mentioned, and upon learning it was Sarah Hurst, her smile faltered slightly. But she quickly regained her composure, cheerfully leading Mark Lane upstairs. As they ascended the stairs, Diana Hurst already had a plan forming in her mind. Midway up, she slipped and stumbled dramatically, letting out a soft moan, feigning pain so severe that she had to ask the handsome Mark Lane to carry her. Before he could fully grasp the situation, Mark Lane, flustered, readily scooped up the damsel in distress. His awkwardness played right into Diana Hurst's trap. She was inwardly triumphant, her little scheme working even better than she'd anticipated. Upon reaching the second floor, Diana Hurst instructed Mark Lane to carry her to her room and gently place her on the bed. But as he bent down to release her, Diana pulled him down onto the bed with her, intimately close. In this moment, her subtle perfume enveloped him, and Diana's inviting gaze made Mark blush, even causing a sensory overload. He awkwardly tried to stand, but she skillfully held him tight, his gaze becoming even more shy and bewildered. Diana Hurst smiled seductively, whispering, "Mark Lane, you're really handsome. I like you." Seeing him still stunned, she continued softly, "What about you? Do you like me?" Under Diana's relentless advances, Mark Lane finally succumbed. They shared a passionate kiss, enjoying the romantic moment that filled Sarah Hurst's room. Half an hour later, tranquility returned. Diana Hurst rested her head on Mark Lane's chest, smiling triumphantly. She teased gently, "So, was that your first time? Unexpectedly shy, aren't you?" Mark Lane, both embarrassed and affectionate, gently stroked Diana Hurst, not forgetting to promise with a polite, yet dreamy tone, "I'm always ready for a second time right away." Diana Hurst chuckled, adding a wink full of implication, before patting his back and reminding him playfully, "Back to reality, boy. Go get Director Cole's things, or you'll tire me out." The reminder jolted Mark Lane awake. He quickly composed himself and began gathering Sarah Hurst's belongings. He clumsily packed while nervously answering Diana's probing and sweet questions. Meanwhile, Diana seized the opportunity to establish a legitimate ownership certificate to enter ClearPath and meet Luke Cole daily. Mark Lane, as if hypnotized, kept promising to put in a good word for her before every necessary interview, completely unaware that Diana's plan had long since gone much further. Returning to the Cole family residence with a bag and a bundle of anxieties about the time, Mark Lane immediately met Diana Lynn's suspicious gaze. "Why so long? Madam only listed a few items." Mark Lane blushed, stammering that Madam's things were scattered, so he had to search. Diana Lynn blinked a few times, as if she knew what happened but didn't inquire further, simply guiding him upstairs. Meanwhile, Sarah Hurst came down for lunch after a long sleep and was surprised to find Luke Cole sitting at the table. She paused, unable to think of a reason why Director Cole would come home at this hour. Lunch was eaten in silence, but as soon as it was over, he casually announced he was going to the company, as if they were a long-married couple, making her shake her head and reassure herself that she must be overthinking. Back at the Hurst family residence, Diana Hurst was sobbing, utterly resentful that what was rightfully hers was now in Sarah Hurst's hands. Seeing this, Kenneth Hurst rushed over, immediately asking, "What's wrong, my dear daughter?" Diana Hurst tearfully complained, saying she couldn't accept Luke Cole's attention towards Sarah. Nancy West chimed in with annoyance, that Sarah is really good at playing the innocent, virtuous girl to steal this opportunity. "My daughter is so beautiful and intelligent, yet she has to suffer this injustice. I absolutely cannot accept it." After hearing Nancy West's complaints about Sarah Hurst, Kenneth Hurst's face darkened. He couldn't believe that his daughter, having just stepped foot into the Cole family, was already showing such disdain for the Hurst family. He couldn't let her get away with such an ungrateful attitude. He silently resolved not to let Sarah easily find happiness. On the other end of the line, Sarah Hurst knew the moment she heard her father's voice that it wouldn't be good. And she wasn't wrong. Kenneth Hurst's voice boomed, laced with irritation, "You think landing Luke Cole means you can look down on this family? Don't think you're getting off that easy." But Sarah's response was ice cold. His words no longer rattled her, only fueled her determination to prove herself. That afternoon, Luke Cole came home and immediately sought out his bride-to-be. Upon entering the living room, his eyes scanned the area, then he casually asked Diana Lynn, "Where is she?" Diana Lynn, seemingly understanding his intent, replied softly, "Madam is relaxing at the hot springs out back." Luke Cole nodded nonchalantly, then immediately headed towards the back garden with a speed that left no room for interruption. Arriving at the springs, he spotted Sarah Hurst from afar, immersed in the rising steam, humming a tuneless melody. He tried to suppress a chuckle, but a soft laugh escaped him. Startled by the sound, Sarah quickly submerged herself deeper into the water, her eyes wide as she scanned her surroundings. Luke Cole deliberately coughed, increasing her panic, prompting a fierce threat, "I'm Luke Cole's fiancée. He'll hear about this." This finally broke Luke Cole's composure. He stepped forward, looking at her calmly, "I just came to call you for lunch." A mixture of embarrassment and annoyance flushed Sarah's face as she dipped her head, wondering if she was being toyed with again. After changing into proper attire, she reluctantly joined him at the dining table. As expected, Luke Cole maintained a neutral expression throughout the meal, as if nothing had happened. Midway through, he casually inquired, "Have all your belongings been transferred from the Hearst family estate?" She nodded, assuming it was polite conversation. But he wasn't finished, adding another seemingly offhand remark, "And your household registration, has that been transferred as well?" Sarah Hearst stared blankly, still processing Luke Cole's mention of the household registration, when he calmly declared, "We're registering our marriage tomorrow." "Wait, what?" Sarah was nearly speechless, flustered to the point of wanting to flee. Luke Cole pressed on, "What?" Having second thoughts. A sharp glance from him silenced her. He reiterated, as casually as if discussing the weather, "I've done my part. Now it's your turn." The next day, Sarah hesitantly descended the stairs to find Luke Cole already waiting, looking every bit the polished gentleman. She thought to herself, "Of course he's eager. Marrying me is one step closer to the Hearst family fortune." Just as they were about to leave, he looked at her and abruptly said, "Hold on." He then instructed Diana Lynn to prepare her a bit, leaving Sarah bewildered. She was led into a lavish dressing room, now, strangely, filled with women's clothing and accessories she'd never seen before. Diana Lynn explained that Luke Cole had arranged everything for her. Sarah couldn't help but think, "He's probably afraid I'll embarrass him with my simple attire." After being transformed into an elegant lady with light makeup and a flattering dress, Sarah gazed at her reflection in the mirror, stunned by her own image. "Oh my! Is this magic, Diana Lynn?" she joked. Diana Lynn chuckled, urging her to go before they were late, adding a teasing remark, "Don't forget to bring back wedding candies," causing Sarah to blush. Downstairs, Luke Cole observed her with evident satisfaction. At the marriage registration office, the clerk's surprise was unconcealed. "Director Cole, you're really getting married?" Sarah shot him a sidelong glance, thinking, "He's pretty famous, recognized everywhere." At the marriage registration office, Luke Cole, without warning, firmly grasped Sarah Hearst's hand and calmly announced, "This is my fiancé. We're here to register our marriage." Before Sarah could react, her hand was securely in his. His warm, large hand caused her, a girl who'd never had a boyfriend, to blush and fumble, wanting to pull away. But when she tried, Luke Cole put his arm around her shoulder, steering her towards the photo area, leaving her no choice but to comply. In the photo room, Luke Cole leaned down, whispering in her ear like a sweet threat, "Changing your mind?" Then, he subtly mentioned her grandfather's surgery, prompting Sarah to obediently take the photo, sign the papers, and accept the official marriage contract. On the way back, Luke Cole declared without hesitation, "We'll have the wedding in 2 months." She asked, bewildered, "Wedding?" He replied nonchalantly, "Our wedding, of course. It has to be grand, for everyone to see." Sarah, sweating, protested, "It's a fake wedding, why so extravagant?" But Luke Cole immediately countered, "Precisely because it's an agreement, it needs to seem even more real." She ruefully thought this might be a love trap and hoped to resign soon after her grandfather's surgery. Arriving at the hospital, Sarah reached to open the car door, but Luke Cole locked it. He smiled, his voice low, "You should call me husband now." Annoyed, she mumbled a reluctant husband, eliciting a smug grin. Reaching the hospital, relieved to escape his teasing, she entered, her face still flushed. Just then, she encountered Nathan, her aloof colleague, observing her with a puzzled expression. His gaze seemed colder, as if he'd discerned something from her flushed cheeks. Nathan personally requested her assistance in a surgery, his eyes intently following her every move, with an intensity that seemed beyond professional interest. Sarah felt uneasy under his scrutiny, but before she could dwell on it, he turned away, leaving her with a strange sense of confusion. After receiving praise from Nathan Tate, Sarah was so thrilled she almost skipped. A compliment from the notoriously demanding doctor was precious. She thought, surely she'd passed her practical skills test. But her joy was short-lived. As she headed for the cafeteria, she was surprised to see Nathan waiting outside, an unusual act for the typically aloof doctor. Dr. Tate simply said, "Let's go," and walked ahead. Sarah, too flustered to react, followed obediently. Upon entering the cafeteria, she heard a familiar voice call her name from the entrance, "Sarah. Someone's looking for you." Sarah turned to see Diana Lynn, the Cole family's royal housekeeper, waving with a well-stocked lunchbox. "Diana Lynn, why did you bring me lunch?" Sarah asked, surprised as Diana Lynn led her to a table, setting aside Sarah's tray and unveiling a lavish spread. Like a doting mother, Diana Lynn said, "You're too thin. You need to eat well." Before she could savor the delicious meal, Sarah noticed Nathan, sitting not far away, frowning slightly in her direction, his gaze strange. After finishing her meal and seeing Diana Lynn off, Sarah remembered she had abandoned Dr. Tate and felt remorseful. With an apple Diana Lynn had prepared, she decided to take it to his room to apologize. Pushing open Nathan's door, she smiled and offered the apple. "Dr. Tate, I'm sorry I forgot earlier. This apple is for you." But he only glanced at it and uttered coldly, "Is your trust only worth an apple?" Embarrassed, she withdrew her hand, about to leave, when she heard him sharply call, "Stop." Nathan stepped forward, took the apple from her hand, and murmured, "With you looking like this, I doubt this apple would even make it out the door." She chuckled, replying, "How could that be?" Nathan pulled out a chair for her and asked directly, "Who brought you lunch?" Sarah answered honestly, "Diana Lynn, Luke Cole's housekeeper." Hearing Luke Cole's name, Nathan's expression shifted. His serious gaze made her momentarily stunned. "Sarah Hurst, Luke Cole is not a simple man. He's not right for you." Sarah started to reply, but couldn't quite formulate a question. Finally, she just smiled gently and said, "I think he's a good person, thoughtful and responsible." Nathan Tate, with a cryptic look and a touch of annoyance, decided to warn Sarah about Luke Cole's dangerous nature. He leaned in, lowered his voice, trying to appear like an experienced love guru, but before he could finish his ominous pronouncements, a knock interrupted them. An emergency surgery pulled both of them into the operating room, and Nathan's cryptic message drifted into oblivion as Sarah seamlessly transitioned into exemplary doctor mode. Nathan thought to himself, "Damn it, I haven't scared her enough, and she's already forgotten. I must find another opportunity to bring this up." Meanwhile, Diana Hurst was focusing all her energy on her plan to work at Clear Paths Company to get close to Luke Cole. With a "fashion is war" mentality, she dressed to the nines and then asked Mark Lane, Luke Cole's assistant, to pave the way for her. Although Mark Lane offered a small privilege for the interview, Diana Hurst played it cool, telling him to keep their connection secret, claiming she wanted to avoid accusations of nepotism or using connections. In reality, she wanted to conceal her relationship with Mark Lane to approach Luke Cole without raising suspicion. After submitting her application at the company, Diana Hurst and Mark Lane met for coffee. Although she found Mark Lane's clinginess a bit annoying, she acted sweet and innocent, subtly inquiring about Luke Cole's preferences, naturally, under the guise of avoiding trouble for the boss later. Thinking it was just casual conversation, Mark Lane honestly spilled all the details about Luke Cole, completely unsuspecting. Seeing him fall so easily into her trap, Diana Hurst rejoiced inwardly, confident that with a lovely foothold like Mark Lane, winning over Luke Cole would only be a matter of time. Diana Hurst, cunning and deliberate, skillfully offered Mark Lane a bit of sweetness to pickpocket more information. At the cafe, she didn't hesitate to lean her head on Mark Lane's shoulder, feigning tears, leaving him utterly captivated. For Mark Lane, the world momentarily consisted solely of the pitiful Diana Hurst. A true master of manipulation. Meanwhile, at the hospital, Sarah was conversing with Dr. Nathan Tate, and just as he gently suggested that if she had more time, he would continue to tutor her further. She was about to happily accept when she suddenly heard Luke Cole's familiar deep voice, "Absolutely not. This statement made both Sarah and Dr. Tate turn around in surprise. Standing there, Luke Cole was calm with a half-smile, but his eyes were full of meaning. Sarah asked, bewildered, "When did you get here?" and received a reply with a cryptic smile, "Just arrived. Saw you engrossed in conversation, so I didn't want to interrupt." At this moment, the atmosphere between Nathan Tate and Luke Cole suddenly became strangely tense. As Luke Cole opened the car door for Sarah, she lingered, looking back at Nathan Tate, causing Luke Cole to frown and say firmly, "Limit your contact with Nathan Tate from now on." Sarah reacted indignantly, emphasizing the contract to remind him that he had no rights over her beyond the role of her nominal fiancé. Luke Cole just smiled, replying coldly, "As the lady of the Cole family, my reputation also affects you," then drove off, leaving Sarah fuming. Throughout the drive back, Sarah remained silent to show her disapproval, but Luke Cole seemed to enjoy the silence, sitting relaxed as if nothing had happened. That evening, Diana Lynn inquired about Sarah's mood,